If we believe that life begins at conception and there's some medication that causes a conceived child to pass through a woman's body rather than to be implanted in her uterus where it can thrive and live, that's abortion, right?
I am yours, I am yours, I am yours, send me, Lord. I am yours, I am yours, I am yours.
Welcome to the Gospel-Centered Pro-Life Podcast, a podcast designed to equip, encourage, and challenge you in pro-life ministry, and always with a focus on the gospel. Stay tuned.
I felt your passion, I've touched your heart.
Use me, Lord, use me, Lord.
Welcome to the Gospel-Centered Pro-Life Podcast. I am Vicki Kosiorg, and I am the Sidewalk Training Director nationally.
Yep.
And here helping our teams, our Sidewalk outreach teams in Charlotte locally. And I'm here, as always, with Daniel Parks.
How's it going, guys? Appreciate you guys listening to this podcast episode. My name is Daniel Parks. I serve as the West Coast Regional Shepherd for Love Life, so oversee all of our efforts on the West Coast and also oversee the Sidewalk ministry nationally. Combined, we've been doing this ministry, this type of ministry, Sidewalk outreach, for I think we decided
I think we're going on 30 years now. I've been doing
okay.
it around 11 now. You're around 18, aren't you? Something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so close to 30 years.
Long enough to make a lot of mistakes and learn from those mistakes by God's grace.
Always learning new things, though.
Yeah.
And we've had some great questions lately from our Sidewalk outreach team members, and that's oftentimes how we develop the podcast.
Yeah.
So this one was also in response to a question. I thought it was a really, really good question. It boils down to the most effective use of our time, in the precious time that we have out when we're ministering in front of an abortion center. But the question specifically was, this Sidewalk outreach team member ministers at a facility that provides birth control and other services, besides abortion, which, a Planned Parenthood would do. The place where we minister in Charlotte, one of them only provides abortions, but the other two do provide other services.
Right.
So her question, which I think everyone should consider, when you have a very limited time to speak to the women streaming into the abortion center, which is true of every place you go, you don't know how long you're going to have, but it's probably going to be limited. How can you do the most good in the amount of time that we have? And specifically, this was her question. How do we address birth control on the sidewalk? If someone says they're just here for birth control, do we go in depth about the risk and possibility of certain birth controls being abortifacient, which means it could cause an abortion?
Right.
What would you say if you only had a few seconds with someone who said this?
Yeah. Yeah. So you're calling out, if you're here for an abortion, we can help you. I'm not here for that. I'm here for birth control. What's the response?
Right.
And of course, there could be a different scenario in which you're talking to someone one-on-one. They do stop and take your information. You talk with them. You're not calling out across a parking lot or whatever, but you're face-to-face on the sidewalk or car side, and they say, well, I'm here for birth control. What's the best way to respond?
Right.
To me, no matter how they respond to me, other than I'm here for an abortion, if they say I'm here for transgender stuff, because that happens a lot at Planned Parenthoods, or I'm here for birth control, or I'm here for, an exam or whatever, I'm going to try to dissuade them from going into the abortion clinic.
Right.
And so if they say that, my first response is actually not going to be to get into depth about birth control, how it can be abortive and all this other stuff. But I'm really going to say, well, they do abortions inside of there, right? And so even though you're not here for that, you're going to be associating yourself and giving money to people that kill children for money. Mm-hmm. That's where I'm going with it pretty much right away. Mm-hmm. But if I have an in-depth conversation, then I'm going to share with them the risks of birth control, potentially being abortive. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you knew this, but I went viral for a little bit on social media because some pro-aborts out here at the Latrobe Abortion Clinic were doing a TikTok video, and they were trying to make us look foolish or whatever. I'm sitting there engaging with them about the issue of birth control because they were talking about birth control and they're like, you don't even know how birth control works. And of course, I broke down for them exactly how birth control works and how it can potentially be abortive. And Live Action shared that, and there's like a lot of views on it. Apparently, I had a lot of people sending it to me like, is this you? Yeah, it's me. Oh, okay. But simply all I was doing is just breaking down the truth of how birth control works, the primary method that birth control works to limit someone from getting pregnant is to keep them from ovulating. And so that's the primary. But there's a secondary function. Many pro-life people don't even know this.
Right.
There's a secondary function with most hormonal birth control. As a matter of fact, I think all hormonal birth control works as a secondary function. It makes the uterus a hostile environment for the implantation of a fertilized egg. And if we believe life begins at conception, not at implantation, because that doesn't make sense, then we have to say something about birth control and how it's potentially abortive.
Yeah, and the IUD also, which many people don't know that's
which
the
is
case.
a form of birth control, right?
Right. So, I agree with you totally. I'm not going to go right into that. If there are two scenarios, one is you're just calling out. Probably not going to get into the abortifacient aspect of birth control at all. The other one, in a more in-depth conversation, maybe. It depends. But I think it is very important to, no matter what they say, to do exactly what you said. They kill babies here. Your money will be used to profit an industry that murders dozens, if not thousands, of innocent babies every week, every month, whatever. Do you really want to be a part of giving your money to that kind of a place? And if they pause and to talk with me, I'll go right into God usually there. Do you know God? Because the vast majority of the people that are there for birth control are unmarried.
Right.
And if they are claiming to know God, then that to me is almost the critical point to get across to them is, if you know God, why are you doing things that God has told you not to do?
Right.
Because that'll deal with the abortion issue too, really. But and if they say yes, I'll say, are you married? And then that leads into, you can get into the whole sexual morality issue and talking about God. But the most important thing that we need to let the women know as they're walking in, and we have a short amount of time, is that this is a place that does not honor God.
Yeah.
That always assume it's possible. It's possible they're lying. Maybe they're not there for birth control. So always be able to speak to the issue of abortion itself, just in case.
Right.
So I will try to get that in.
Yeah.
Whether you're here or not for an abortion, do you know that this place does do abortions, and abortions kill a living human being made in the image of a holy God whose heart is already beating? So if you say that, you're not accusing them of lying, but you've still given them what I think are the critical 3 talking points all in one 15-second sentence.
Yeah.
And not to say you have to use those words or you're wrong, but I do think it's important to speak to the issue of abortion just in case every single time. To every single woman that's going in there, because you don't know if they're telling the truth or not.
Yeah. I mean, the simple fact is an abortion always ends in the ending of a human life. Mm-hmm. Birth control doesn't always end in that. As a matter of fact, the primary function, like I just laid out, is not abortive in nature. The primary function is to keep a woman from even conceiving a child. But there is always the potential for birth control, hormonal birth control, to be abortive. And so, again, I do think there's a context in which you could share that, but there's a lot of nuance, and there's a lot of ways you have to break that down. Again, you've got to think in the terms of what's the most useful use of your time.
That's right. In let's say you only have 15 seconds. Now, if I'm going to be talking to them about, are you married? And, well, what do you think God says about sexual purity? Blah, blah, blah. That's not going to be something I'm going to be calling out across the parking lot. That's a personal discussion. And so I think one of the keys for helping us to figure out what to say and when to say it, if it's something that is very personal in terms of sexual morality, I think that's probably better for a one-on-one discussion where
Yeah.
where that person doesn't have an audience, because I don't think that's the sort of topic that someone who knows that there's an audience is likely to respond well
Yeah.
to you. So that's when I bring in the birth control
Right,
discussion.
yeah.
Is usually it is a more in-depth
Yeah.
one-on-one discussion when there's been an element of trust established,
Yeah.
mutual respect, whatever. So,
Makes sense.
yeah. So where do we focus then? Like you said, the issue of a baby is going to die in an abortion, that has to be our focus. That's why we're there. So we should always get in words that are going to make them reconsider if they've lied, reconsider that why they should not get an abortion, and if they're telling the truth, reconsider that they're helping to perpetuate an industry
Yeah.
that provides abortion. So getting to the key issue, abortion is wrong, it's immoral.
Yeah.
You should have no part of it, and no part of an industry that is involved in it. So when I was thinking this through, when I answered her question, I was thinking about, okay, what are the key principles involved
Right.
in how we and when we address any issue.
Right.
And the first thing is just remember you probably only have a short amount of time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So don't get into anything that needs to be developed.
Right.
Like I have heard people go into a whole apologetics kind of thing, which requires a great deal of complex thought expressed, and that's usually a more involved discussion.
Right.
That's probably not what I'm going to choose to get into in the potential 15 seconds
Right.
that I have to call out. So you have limited time. Use it to full advantage.
Yeah.
If you can't fully develop an idea to a point where it's going to make sense and stay with them, in my opinion, don't bother. Wait
Right.
till you can be
Yeah.
one-on-one with them.
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of this concept just came to my mind, actually. We want to speak to the heart rather than to the mind
Yeah.
in that scenario, because you just don't have a lot of time to develop thoughts, right? I mean, you think about it, okay, you're there talking with a woman about the risks of birth control, because there are risks,
Yeah.
right? Beyond just the risk that it could be abortive. There's risks to women.
Yeah.
But you can get into all of that. You can get into the abortifacient aspect of it. You can get into the different kinds of birth control. You have all these conversations. Meanwhile, people are going into the abortion clinic and you're missing them because of that conversation that are actually going in for abortions. And so you just don't want to get distracted. You want to keep the main thing. Babies are dying inside of that place. Focus on that. Sting people with the truth. Babies are dying inside of there. Again, that's going to be my first thing. You don't want to go inside of there. That baby,
They kill babies.
Yeah,
They
they're
kill
killing
babies
babies. They're
there.
going to be associated with a place that kills children. And sometimes that's enough to dissuade them from even going in, whether they're there for birth control or, hormonal therapy for transgender stuff,
Right.
or, a
Right.
pelvic exam or whatever they might be in there for.
Yeah, I think you raised a really good point. You want to get to their heart, using facts, or just something that is going to make them pause and really feel that what they're about to do is wrong. And I don't think most of them, in a quick 10-second calling out, did you know birth control causes abortions? Most people are probably, unless they've researched it themselves, they're probably not going to believe you anyway.
Yeah.
And you're going to need time to develop that, and you don't have it. So, another principle: always speak first to the value of the unborn child and why abortion is wrong. I think every single person that enters there, even if it's someone that's obviously there for transgender, hormonal therapy, whatever, they're still going in. That has its own moral implications, but they're still going into a place that kills babies and giving their money to a place that kills babies. And I have had actually people going in for hormonal therapy who on the way out will stop and talk to me and have told me they don't agree with abortion.
Yeah.
And I was able to then, address not only their issue of why do they feel they need to distort their body, change their body, but I'm able to talk about why they shouldn't be giving their money ever to an abortion center.
Yeah.
So there's not. I do want to say there's nothing wrong with addressing the abortifacient aspect of birth control. I just think the timing is what we're saying is important. Make sure that you have enough time to do it, and make sure that the 3 key vital talking points are addressed first.
Yeah. Well, another thing too is make sure you're fully informed.
Yeah.
Like again, maybe some of you guys that are listening, you didn't catch our episode that we did probably years ago about birth control and the potential abortifacient nature of birth control. In our trainings, I think in our 101 training, we have a link in the midst of that, or actually in the application process, there's a link to some articles about hormonal birth control and how it can be potentially abortive. And so we try to make sure people are fully informed, but if you don't have that information, you can Google it very easily. Is birth control abortive? Focus on the Family has articles about it. I mean, it's been well talked about. And so, some Christians maybe are just uninformed or just in denial about the fact that it could be abortive, but that's the reality. That's the nature of how that works. So you definitely be informed yourself, be convinced yourself that it's wrong. Again, if we believe that life begins at conception and there's some medication that causes a conceived child to pass through a woman's body rather than to be implanted in her uterus where it can thrive and live, that's abortion, right? I mean, that's what's happening there. That baby's being aborted.
Yeah.
And so we need to be informed of that so that we can inform others.
I have found as I read through our Sidewalk outreach applications that I would say at least half of the people that answer that question about birth control say it was an eye-opener. They read the article and they said, I had no idea. And some of them have said that it would change their use of birth control because they just didn't know that. So it's important. I'm not saying that is not an important thing. I think it is less important than not addressing the whole abortion issue in case that mom is there for an abortion, or just the fact that abortion is wrong before God, and this is a place that does abortions. Kind of a general principle that we've said over and over again, and it's really important, is direct them back to God.
Right.
The fact that it's abortifacient is, of course, harming a little person made in God's holy image, but to be more direct in talking about God, and I think there's more effective ways of doing that than of addressing the fact that some birth control is abortifacient.
Right.
So keep directing them to God and asking what He would have them to do. And another general principle, keep asking questions that will help them to pause and think about what they're doing. Do you really want to give your money to a place that kills babies would be an example of that. What do you think? Do you think God would have you go to a place that that kills babies?
Yeah, yeah.
So always keep in mind, I guess, the main goal of our ministry out there, which is that we want to change a culture of death to a culture of life.
Right.
And those little babies, the unborn babies that are being slaughtered in there, maybe have only a few more minutes to live.
Right.
So always focus on that first. When when I say that they might be lying, I do think it's important to remember that word might be lying. there are times they're telling the truth.
Yeah. I think most of the time, especially in that question, if they're there for birth control, most of the time what I've perceived is they are telling the truth.
Yeah.
Now, I know if they say that here at the Latrobe Abortion Clinic, I know that they're lying because I know that that's all they do inside of there is abortions.
Right.
They're not coming just for birth control.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I think we can have that as an underlying assumption, or at least a possibility that they're lying to us, but you never want to respond with "you're lying." You never want to just come from the perspective of "you're lying," because there's a lot of other things that we could say that could help compel them to come over and talk with us, right? Well, you're here for birth control. Well, did you know that they do abortions inside there? Come over and talk with me, you know?
Yeah.
And you can share a little more in depth. Sometimes you that's an opportunity to inform them of what happens inside of the place. Also inform them if you, again, have enough time and don't get completely distracted from why you're actually there, to really break down the potential abortive nature of birth control.
Yeah. Another thing that's kind of connected to this is if you're going to be challenging them, you should not be giving your money to a place that does abortions.
Yeah.
It's very wise to have a list of other places that provide real health care that don't do abortions.
Right.
So that you're not just protesting something, but you're providing the alternative that is a healthy, God-honoring alternative.
Right.
So we have such a document for the Charlotte area. It's easy enough to find.
Yeah.
Low-cost health centers.
And plenty of pregnancy centers that you can point them to that gives free pregnancy tests.
Now, they're not going to do
ultrasounds.
birth control.
Yeah, of course not.
I don't think any pregnancy centers are going to do birth control. But if they come and talk with you because you say, hey, listen, I've got this list of resources, well, then they've just come over. Now might be your opportunity to get into the birth control issue, so that card that has other community resources is a good idea, because it's kind of a carrot to get them to.
Yeah.
I can get people who really don't want us there talking about abortion, but when they hear that there are other low-cost community resource centers they could go to, they will come and get that card from me and talk with me further.
Yeah.
So, I have a verse that struck me as being a good one to go with this podcast. It's from Proverbs 12:18. I love Proverbs.
Yeah. Proverb a day keeps the
Satan
flesh
away.
away.
Oh, the flesh away. Okay.
Yeah, it does keep your flesh in check.
Okay. Yeah. There is one who speaks like the piercings of the sword, but the tongue of the wise promotes health. So I thought about that, that we can speak either way. We can speak in a way that people feel pierced, maybe even attacked, or we can speak in a way that really promotes a healthy response.
Yeah.
And I think that we're maybe called to do both at the proper time. But I would say in your 15 seconds, since my goal is that they will actually come and talk with me longer, I kind of want to do the other half of that verse, the tongue that I want to be wise and promote health. I want them to truly decide she's worth talking to.
Right.
Not because she's saying don't do something, but because she's offering me something that I know I really need.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's a great proverb, great to apply, not just to the scenario that we were talking about here, but in a lot of the scenarios that we deal with on the sidewalk, for sure. So, well, guys, we hope that this episode was a blessing to you and informative and instructive to you guys. We'd encourage you to reach out to us. You can reach me, Daniel, at lovelife.org. You reach her, Vicky, with a Y, at lovelife.org. Also, check out our podcast website, gospelcenteredprolife.com, where you can search all of our episodes. And check out Sidewalks for Life, sidewalks, 4, life.com. It's where all of our articles are. And also, there's a lot of training and equipping information there. And until next time, God bless.
God bless you all.
For love, give me an outlet for gratitude. I know it will cost me my life, but nothing's too precious since I met you.